What I'm saying is, if they want to leave, they can leave, John. They can leave. I mean, I look at Omar. I don't know. I never met her. I hear the way she talks about Al-Qaeda. Al-Qaeda has killed many Americans. She said, you can hold your chest out. You can, when I think of America, when I think of Al-Qaeda, I can hold my chest out. When she talked about the World Trade Center being knocked down, some people, you remember the famous some people. These are people that, in my opinion, hate our country. Now, you can say what you want, but get a list of all of the statements they've made. And all I'm saying that if they're not happy here, they can leave. They can leave. And you know what? I'm sure that there'll be many people that won't miss them.
But they're American citizens.
But they have to love our country. They're Congress people. And I never used any names.
Are you
but
okay
these are
with
people.
people thinking your tweets are racist, Mr. President?
Quiet.
Are you okay with people thinking your tweets are racist, sir?
Quiet. These are people that if they don't like it here, they can leave. And I don't know who's going to miss them, but I guess some people will.
Sir,
one of them is polling. One of them is polling at 8. One of them is polling at 8%. One of them is polling at 8%. So when I hear people speaking about how wonderful Al-Qaeda is, when I hear people talking about some people with the World Trade Center, some people, no, not some people, much more than some people. When I hear the statements that they've made, and in one case you have somebody that comes from Somalia, which is a failed government, a failed state, who left Somalia, who ultimately came here, and now is a congresswoman who's never happy, says horrible things about Israel, hates Jews, hates Jews. It's very simple. And if the Democrats want to wrap their bows around this group of 4 people, one of them kept Amazon out of New York, tens of thousands of jobs, would have been a great thing. And she kept Amazon from going, would have been a good deal. I mean, could he have made better? Maybe. But tens of thousands of jobs. And New York has not been the same since that happened. It's really hurt New York and New York City. Amazon was going to go. They were going to relocate a major section of their business in New York. She kept them out. That was a terrible thing she did. A terrible thing she did. So here's the story. Here's the story. I see them complaining. They're complaining constantly. I watched Lindsey Graham today on Fox and Friends talking about the same subject, and frankly, even stronger than what I'm saying. He said they're communists. I'm saying that they're socialists, definitely. As to whether or not they're communists, I would think they might be. But this isn't what our country is about. Nevertheless, they're free to leave if they want. And if they want to leave, that's fine. And if they want to stay, that's fine. But the people have to know. And politicians can't be afraid to take them on. A politician that hears somebody where we're at war with Al-Qaeda and see somebody talking about how great Al-Qaeda is, pick out her statement. That was Omar. How great Al-Qaeda is. When you hear that, and we're losing great soldiers to Al-Qaeda, when you see the World Trade Center gets knocked down, and you see the statements made about the World Trade Center, all the death and destruction, I'll tell you what, I'm not happy with them. And it's very easy to be saying, oh, gee, well, it's okay. If weak politicians want to say, and the Democrats in this case, if they want to gear their wagons around these 4 people, I think they're going to have a very tough election, because I don't think the people of the United States will stand for it.
Mr. President? Mr. President? Mr. President?
John, go ahead.
Mr. President,
go ahead, John.
Let me see if I can sum up sort of what people are talking about here. Does it concern you that that tweet was seen as racist? Lindsey Graham said, encouraged you to aim higher. And does it trouble you?
No, he didn't say about that. He just said, don't go. See, I disagree with Lindsey.
Okay, but can I
These
finish?
are congressmen. What am I supposed to do? Just wait for senators? No.
And does
These are 4. So I disagree with Lindsey on that. That was the only thing.
Right.
He said, aim higher, shoot higher. What am I going to do? Wait till we get somebody else in a higher position, a higher office? These are people that hate our country. Hey, John, they hate our country. They hate it, I think, with a passion. Okay. Now, it's possible I'm wrong. The voter will decide. But when I hear the way they talk about our country, when I hear the anti-Semitic language they use, when I hear the hatred they have for Israel and the love they have for enemies like Al-Qaeda, then you know what? I will tell you that I do not believe this is good for the Democrat Party. Certainly, it's not the party that I've known over the years.
But can I just finish?
Mr. President, where should they? Mr. President, where should Mr. President?
Does it concern you that many people saw that tweet as racist and that white nationalist groups are finding common cause with you on that point?
It doesn't concern me because many people agree with me. And all I'm saying, they want to leave, they can leave. Now, it doesn't say leave forever. It says leave if you want. But what it says, John, what that says is if they're not happy with the United States, if they're doing nothing but criticizing us all the time, you see these people walking down criticizing the United States, we just hit the highest stock market in history. All of these incredible manufacturers that are in, these are great business people. They employ many people, and we have workers with us, too. They're having the best year they've ever had. Can I say that? Is that a correct statement? So, and they're hiring more people than they've ever had, and more people are making a good living than they've ever had. We just hit 27,000 plus on the Dow. It's the highest the stock market has ever been. And you have to go by the election because the market started going up the day after I won. You know, they like to add all of that tremendous gain. They like to try and give it to Obama. The fact is, if I would have lost, the stock market would crash. And if these people that I watch in those debates ever got their hands on the United States government, 401ks, the values of your company, everything else that we talk about we're so proud of, it's down the tubes. People will lose their money. They'll lose their wealth. You'll have a crash like you've never seen before. And I'm really good at this stuff. I know what I'm talking about. Thank you all very much. Thank you.
Why didn't your threats about the ICE raids? Where is your president? ICE raids. Why didn't they happen? To scare people? Was that just to scare people? President, why didn't your threats
The ICE raids were very successful. People came into our country illegally. Many were felons. Many were convicted of crimes. Many were taken out on Sunday. You just didn't know about it. In fact, I spoke to the head of ICE. I spoke to a couple of people. We had many people. It was a very successful day, but you didn't see a lot of it because it was done a lot. You'll speak to them. And I'm not even sure they should be telling you, but it was a lot. And it wouldn't have to be Sunday. We've been doing this. Look, we have been removing MS-13. They're monsters. We've been removing MS-13 by the thousands during my administration. And I tell my people, it's much easier to go the other route. But I say, focus on the criminals. Focus on the people that are killing people, that are causing crime. Focus on them. Much easier just to go to general population. That's easy. But I don't do it the easy way. We're getting tremendous numbers of criminals. And yesterday, it was just reported to me before I walked, because I said, how did that go yesterday? It didn't have to start yesterday. The truth is, it started a number of days before yesterday, but yesterday was very successful. People come into our country illegally, and they go out legally. Every person taken out had papers, and we had court orders. Okay, thank you.
Mr. President, asylum?
Agreement with Guatemala. Come on up.
All right, you see the President of the United States there still getting questions yelled at him on sundry of topics, and he's got his pin out. The proclamation on Made in America Day and Made in America Week is what this event is all about. And normally at those occasions where you have reporters shouting things out, you usually don't have a large clap or cheer for the president, because that's an event where it's media. But you could hear all of those people who have shown up to see some of the products made in America, and they have been out there for hours. And then the president decided to take some questions from the media, and it was all about other things, particularly his Twitter fight with some representatives in Congress whom he got into it with over the weekend. and then since more. And in just the last little while, House Speaker Nancy Pelosi says that she wants to put together a proclamation of her own. She's proposing wording a resolution in the House responding to the president's what she calls xenophobic statements on Twitter. And around we go. Let's bring in former White House press secretary for President George W. Bush and Fox News contributor Ari Fleischer. Ari, this just deepened in terms of a topic.
Yes, it's a Donnybrook, isn't it? Look, I don't think this is complicated, Harris. Everything that the president said today, what he said, is an arguable issue, is a fair fight. Go after those four. They provide plenty of fodder for the president and for Republicans. But I just don't think anybody in American politics should challenge people from the basis of where they are from, which is essentially what the president did. I thought his tweet went too far. It's the vulnerability of Twitter in the hands of a counterpuncher who can go too far. What he said today is a horse of a different color.
How so?
Because he went after them mostly on policy. His remarks today talked about the anti-Semitic things that some of these congresswomen have said.
All right, let me ask you to pause right there. If that's the case, and you can see these things on record from Congresswoman Omar from Minnesota, and you can see these things on record from others who have either tweeted in the so-called hashtag squad. Is it fair then for Nancy Pelosi not to also have some sort of resolution about that anti-Semitic language, as some have called it and understand it to be?
Sure, and I think that's why this resolution she's pondering is probably not going to be effective as the Democrats think it is. It sounds like a clean shot against Trump right now.
What are we fighting over right now?
Because of the records of these four congresswomen.
What is the true fight? Is it a fight over, and I asked this last hour on Outnumbered, Ari, is this a fight over who's more patriotic and what makes you more? Is this a fight over who hates America? And what is the crux of this?
I think there are two levels to it. One, whose side are you on? Are you on the side of these four progressives, or are you on the side of Donald Trump? That's what most people just split on simply. There's another side to it, too. And to me, that side is, can the president go too far sometimes in his tweets when he says, go back where you're from? And that, I think, is inappropriate. I don't think that's presidential. I don't think that's the language a president should use. Now, it also needs to be said that his four opponents in this instance, they use equally inflammatory language against the president. They don't get hammered by the media the way the president does. But even so, the president needs to send that signal and lift people up. And when he gets down on that level, I think he only hurts himself. And in this instance, politically, Harris, these Democrats were at war with Nancy Pelosi. There was a fire going on between them and Nancy Pelosi. And President Trump, in effect, became the fire extinguisher and reunited the Democratic Party.
Yeah, and speaking of fire, I don't know if you could hear some of those questions that were being shouted at the president, and then he went back and forth with our own Fox News' John Roberts. John Roberts is trying his best to get in front of a camera and a microphone just shortly here. We'll bring him in after you are. But we've been showing some live video while you and I are talking. It's Made in America Day at the White House. Yeah. And you had a lot of people cheering for the president. You had a lot of spectators there, just people in the audience. There it is live, seeing things like a full-size THAAD system. I mean, there's a whole lot out on the lawn that you can take a look at. And yet you have a fight over in America, ideas made in America. And you say the president has gone in the right direction now, getting back on policy. He could have, or could he not? Is this a fantasy in my head? Had he not weighed in this way, he could have called the speaker and said, deal with the fight that's going on in your party, because those words are tough.
Absolutely. Look, there were so many other opportunities for President Trump here to keep the Democrat internal fight going, for the president to do what he's been doing, taking Nancy Pelosi's side. All those would have been effective tactics. Look, those four congresswomen are radicals. You can't say enough about them, but the one thing you shouldn't say is to question their country, what country they belong to. Say, go home. I just think there have to be bounds in politics that restrict all of us, Harris.
We got
there has to be a decency to the fight, and that's where I'll blow a whistle. And look, I think the president has done tremendously good things for this country, but every once in a while he counterpunches so hard that, I've said it before, he ends up hitting himself. And I think that was the case with this tweet. Forgive me,
I'm going to ask you to sit by, because we have Chief White House Correspondent John Roberts now from the South Lawn. John, it got pretty chippy out there with some of the reporters and the president, but he made it very clear his point of view on this. Ari Fleischer saying he's focusing back on policy with these 4 women in Congress who call themselves the Squad.
Yeah, he is focusing back on policy, which is this, the very premise of this Made in America event. But the tweet that he sent out, calling out without naming them, these freshman members of Congress, really is what's kind of driving the news cycle today. The president was asked directly about it a couple of times. Once as he was passing by in front of this Freeman boat over here, whether or not he believed that tweet was racist, as many of his critics have said. The president said, no, I don't believe it was. And we asked him again up here at the podium, and he gave a long list of reasons why he believes it's fair to call out these members of Congress. He says he doesn't believe that they like America, and if you don't like America, you can leave, you can go somewhere else. And we should point out that 3 out of the 4 women were born in the United States. Ocasio-Cortez was born in the Bronx. Ilhan Omar was the only one who was born outside of the United States in Mogadishu. But the president standing up and saying that a lot of people agree with the way that he characterized it, and the fact that he said, if you don't like it here in the United States, if you just want to be critical, if you don't want to help out, then maybe you should try going somewhere else. But it was pointed out, and I got the question to him on behalf of a number of other journalists who were wanted to ask the question as well, does it concern him that this tweet was seen as racist, and does it concern him that white nationalist groups are finding common cause with this idea of, if you don't like the United States, well get the heck out. It's as Kamala Harris said, the old trope of, why don't you go back where you came from? The president did not seem concerned about that, and again giving the reasons why he believes that these 4 freshman members of Congress are not representing the United States in the way that they should. But certainly they were elected. They're representing a constituency. So I think that there's going to be a disagreement here, clearly, between the way that the President Harris sees it and the way that these freshman members of Congress see it.
So you're in a unique position because you're out there with people who come to this day that's being, recognized as Made in America Day, Made in America Week 2019. This is the 3rd such event that they have had at the White House like this. So this is kind of an interesting group of people because they're there for all-American fare, and they get served up those questions about racism and everything else. What was some of the response from the crowd? I could hear some cheering on behalf of some of the answers that the president was giving.
Yeah, let me point out, too, I'm also in a unique position because I'm precariously positioned on 2 chairs here on the south lawn of the White House. But the people who were here today didn't want to talk about the tweets. They didn't want to talk about those other members of Congress. They wanted to talk about the fact that they believe that now is one of the best times in history to do business in America and to produce things in America. Some of these companies have brought production back from overseas. Lightspeed bicycles, the president was pointing out, was making some of its bikes, and they became famous in the early 2000s for making very good titanium bicycles. Then they offshored some of their work, and now they're bringing it back to the United States, and they have seen their production explode by more than 70%. So the people who were here in this crowd tonight wanted to applaud the economic policies that the president is pursuing, the deregulation, the tax cuts, the idea of trying to level the playing field with countries like China, with the European Union, with Japan, South Korea, and others, so that businesses in the United States can flourish. The president's point is that successive administrations over decades have really given away the American manufacturing farm to nations like China and Taiwan and Vietnam and places like that. And the president says that's fine. You can have your business done with these countries, but it's got to be a level playing field. And I think the people, to a person in this crowd, whether it be Lockheed Martin, who's making missile systems, or this company from South Carolina that's making boats, they like the idea that the president is standing up for an America First economic policy.
Well, and you mentioned that. I was interested in that full-size THAAD missile system that apparently is on display, and a host of other things out there driven by conversations about the economy. So he was asked, the president was asked all these questions about these congresswomen, but he was able to, from what you're reporting, move on with policy because the event allowed him to do that too. I just want to ask you, in terms of what the president had to say, he got back up out of his seat after he said he had wrapped up. He also talked about the ICE raids over the weekend. Yep. And he said that we as journalists need to check with the agencies to see how many people were picked up. But he said, quote, many people were taken out on Sunday. They came into the country illegally. They left legally. And he said, it started a number of days before yesterday. And I just want to kind of get your reporting on what he also had to say on this topic.
Yeah, well, the problem is, Harris, that at this moment, Immigration and Customs Enforcement is not giving out numbers of how many people were rounded up in the enforcement actions. Now, the president makes the point that they're not just willy-nilly going and rounding up people who are in this country illegally. These are people who have gone through the process. Their cases have been adjudicated in the courts, and they have orders of deportation against them that they are not complying with. And so ICE is going out and they're rounding up these people. The president was careful to say, and he said this last week, and he said it again today, the criminals who have deportation orders are the main priority right now. Democrats are concerned that a lot of families are going to be broken up if ICE goes in and enforces these removal orders. So the president was careful to say criminal individuals are the ones who have been targeted. He wouldn't talk about numbers. ICE, again, is not talking with numbers. I'll check with my contacts there in a little while. But we may get these numbers dribbled out over the next 2 or 3 days.
We may or we may not. I mean, you remember under President Obama, who leads all of the presidents currently with the number of deportations of criminals who committed further crimes beyond just being in the nation criminally or illegally. But we didn't get those numbers until much later, and they're north of 3 million from what we know. So, John Roberts, they're about to, and I don't make a joke about this, you're going to lose those 2 seats, my friend, that you're standing on. They've taken every other chair around you. Thank you, John Roberts.
They're taking the missile system down now, too. Should point out, too, that THAAD missile system, Terminal High Altitude Air Defense, that's the missile system that Saudi Arabia has been using very effectively to counter missiles that have been fired at Riyadh from Yemen. So that's a real point of pride for Lockheed Martin and the United States.
Thank you. I'm going to bring in former White House Press Secretary for President George W. Bush, Fox News contributor Ari Fleischer coming back now. A lot of material covered by the president today. Your thoughts on the venue for this, and does this move the ball forward away from the incendiary fight that was going on Twitter between the president and four, as they call themselves, the squad in Congress?
No, of course not. It won't for the media. It won't for political Twitter. We'll be stuck in this for about 24, 48 hours, and then we'll be on to something else. That's a cycle. We've seen this before. I just think so many of the American people have heard the president talk in this manner before, and they still find strong reasons to support the president. Others hear this, and they think this is the definition of presidential bad behavior, and therefore they can't stand this president. I think there's a middle ground. I think it'd be helpful for the country to have the president not pulverize his opponents the manner he sometimes does, making it sound as if they are unwelcome in America when they are indeed American citizens, and they have a right to their opinion. Their opinions are wrong, but they have a right to state them. And then for the president to do what he does on policy. I'm in that middle ground. I just think that this controversy is something the press loves and will be with it for a little while longer.
We're hearing from members, Senator Graham and others who are talking about this. You say that the women's opinions are wrong. The question now comes, will Nancy Pelosi also talk about the manner in which they've made those opinions? Ari Fleischer, thank you very much.
Thank you.
President Trump, as I just mentioned moments ago, calling ICE raids that began over the weekend very successful, as his administration announces a major new crackdown on asylum seekers. Next with me, former acting ICE Director Tom Homan will weigh in. Stay close.
Illegally. Many were felons. Many were convicted of crimes. Many were taken out on Sunday. You just didn't know about it.
A lot live from the president just moments ago. He was referencing there the ICE deportation operation that the administration says took place or began a few days before this weekend. The president says it was, quote unquote, very successful, but Democrats are calling the enforcement actions inhumane. Watch.
This administration announcing that they're going to do mass raids is completely unproductive and harmful. There are a lot of families in our country that are mixed or blended families, where in that household there are documented immigrants, there are undocumented immigrants, there are people who have visas, and they're living in abject fear.
Meanwhile, the Trump administration announced a major crackdown on asylum seekers, issuing a new rule requiring most migrants to first seek asylum in one of the countries that they travel through, whether it be Mexico or another country. I want to bring in now Tom Homan, former acting ICE director and Fox News contributor. Tom, great to see you today. I know you've been very vocal leading up to the weekend. First of all, Senator Kamala Harris saying that the president's announcement of what was coming was unhelpful. Your thoughts?
Well, look, I think it was helpful. We're trying to warn Central Americans, don't make this journey, come up here and commit immigration fraud, spend your life savings, put yourself in the hands of criminal organizations, only to lose your case and be removed. I mean, the president gave exact location, exact times, and it's far different from what the Oakland mayor did. What the Oakland mayor did is give advance notice of a criminal operation where we were seeking people with criminal histories.
So we saw President Obama do this a lot. He didn't talk about it. We found out that there were north of 3 million people who left the country this way, concentrating on those criminals who'd broken our laws after they'd already broken the law to either stay here or get here. How is this different, though, with families? Because that's what Democrats are saying, that this furthers the necessity to house family members' children, because I guess the argument is that they are with these people who must be deported, who already have orders?
Well, first of all, the family's being arrested. As you said, I did it back in FY15 during the first surge. I did an operation called Operation Border Guardian, and we went and sought out those families that had due process. A judge ordered them removed, so they had to be removed. If not, you send a message to the rest of the world. You can come up here illegally, claim, making a fraudulent asylum claim, lose your case, get order removed by a federal judge, and you still don't have to leave? No, this has to be done to keep integrity in the system. ICE is really good at this. The men and women that do this are fugitive operations officers. They do this every day. They've done it the day before this operation. They'll do it the day after this operation. They know exactly who they're looking for and exactly where they're going based on a lot of investigative work. So this is ongoing.
Tom, why not just do this quietly then? Why the big announcement? Why the roundup language? Why is all of this necessary when we saw the previous president deport people this way quietly? I mean, they were doing raids back then, too, under Obama. They nicknamed him Deporter-in-Chief.
Well, I think if you look at what's going on, everybody's thinking, this past weekend was a failure. And it hasn't been. I think ICE is doing a great job.
What was the success of it all? Because we don't have numbers, and we may not get numbers for a while.
Because ICE is doing it in a smart way, in a more effective way. They're not, what everybody expected, the media was pushing, there's going to be thousands of officers out there raiding cities. That was never going to be like that. This is a targeted enforcement operation, very well planned. And they're out there working now. They're out there working the last few days. And you don't see the big headlines and the big pictures because ICE is doing it in a smart, effective way, the way they should do it. And at the end of the operation, they'll release their numbers on how many families arrested, how many criminals were arrested. They do this every day, and they're very professional, and that's why you're not seeing the headlines of storming, agents in cities and all the things that the media hyped up it to be.
Interesting. Tom Homan, always great to have you on the program as these news items pop. Appreciate your time.
I appreciate you. Thank you.
Ahead, more on those remarks.
I think they're going to have a very tough election because I don't think the people of the United States will stand for it.
President Trump, just a little while ago, live on our network, we watched him unload on progressive Democratic Congresswomen Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Ilhan Omar, Rashida Tlaib, and Ayanna Pressley. He defended his tweets about them saying his words were not racist and also had this to say.
If you're not happy here, then you can leave. As far as I'm concerned, if you hate our country, if you're not happy here, you can leave. And that's what I say all the time. That's what I said in a tweet, which I guess some people think is controversial.
Let's bring in now Ronica Cleary, former White House correspondent and president of Cleary Strategies, Rick Unger, nationally syndicated radio host. Ronica, actually, he moved the ball on some of the wording today because that tweet said you can go back where you came from, basically.
He did change the language.
Did he need to do that?
He did need to do that. Obviously, he has advisors telling him that the language was perceived by a lot of people as racist and arguably is racist. I think that the president did hear that, but I also think the president does not like to kind of go back on the things that he said. So he's clearly being very defensive of his tweets and trying to say that that's what he said the first time around. And perhaps that is what he intended the first time around.
Rick?
Well, you know, this is a common pattern with this president. When he talked about Judge Curiel not being fair with him in the trial over his university, he said, well, he doesn't like me. He's of Mexican descent, and therefore he's prejudiced against me. And then he tried to change that. He said what he said. Look, I have to tell you, I wasn't shocked by what he said. It's what I expect from this president. I know this is going to upset a lot of people in the audience here.
I don't think they'll be surprised to hear you say it.
He is, well, that may be. He is what he is. The question is, how are we as Americans going to react to it? It's not okay.
Well, he talked about the voters deciding. So this is part now of the nomenclature, part of the conversation in 2020. And who put us there? 4 congresswomen now are the focus, and they were fighting with House Speaker Nancy Pelosi.
I do think it's worth mentioning, to Rick's point, that we do live in a world today where the idea of being called a racist is thrown around far too easily. We were just sitting here last week when AOC was calling Nancy Pelosi a racist.
That's why I said first the fight was with her.
Right, and I have to say this, a lot of people are saying that this is great for the Democrats, it's bringing them together.
How is this great for anybody?
What this is going to do is this is going to force Nancy Pelosi to now stand by these 4 congresswomen who, however you feel about them, do not have policies that she wants to bring forward, and it's going to give them a lot more power.
Rick, Veronica's right, because you've got the Speaker of the House getting ready to put forth this resolution condemning the president's remarks. Should he also be condemning some of the anti-Semitic and things that...
He did. He has. That's exactly what he did today. And by the way,
I'm saying, should the Speaker also be condemning those things?
Where's the resolution against the Ilana Mars tweets that were anti-Semitic?
Let me get to a second, because I want to second.
Okay, I want you to answer that question.
I will. I want to second what you said. You're absolutely right. Too many people on my side of the aisle throw around that word racist like it's candy.
Why do you think they do that?
Because they think that if you support Trump, you're a racist. I got news for you. I have a lot of Republican friends who support Trump, and they are not racist. It is thrown around too often. But you know what? If you do behave in a racist way, we have to be able to call them out on that. Now, what was the question you want me to answer?
Well, I want to know whether or not Nancy Pelosi is also going to, or should she do some sort of resolution? Look, the language across the board is incendiary. You've got Nancy Pelosi being called a racist.
I agree with that.
And you say the terms are being thrown around too much.
I am not a big fan.
So should she deal with some of the anti-Semitic things?
She has.
What about the Benjamins and that sort of stuff that's come out of one of these women?
And I've seen her go after. I think that's what set the tone.
That's not the same as a resolution against the president. Should she do something similar?
I'm going to make you feel good about this, because
I don't have to feel a certain way. I'm just asking questions.
Let me tell you what I did. When this first came up, and I tend to be open to what they're saying, but there were some things said, I'm Jewish, that I thought were anti-Semitic. And on my radio show, you know what I proposed? That Nancy Pelosi introduce a resolution condemning that.
Yeah,
so yes, I do agree that she should do that. She should have done it then. The moment has gone by. But that doesn't create
Wait a minute. Wait, hold on a second. My brain just broke. So if something's wrong, isn't it wrong all day long?
Yes.
Is it only a point in time?
I agree.
Okay, Veronica?
She didn't introduce the resolution.
No, she didn't. I agree.
That's the point, that at the end of the day, however you feel about any of these remarks, they are being viewed through the prism of politics only, rather than the prism of what is right and wrong.
Completely agree with that.
Right? And that is what's frustrating. And that's where Nancy Pelosi, as powerful as she is being played like a puppet.
But let's keep this in perspective.
Nancy Pelosi being played like a puppet. You get the last word.
Let's
Make it
keep
quick.
it in perspective.
You got 15
One is the
seconds.
leader of the free world, the president of the United States, and a couple of these people are members of
No, we're talking
Congress.
about Nancy Pelosi right now. She's also very
she's
powerful.
not the one who said it.
All right. Good to see you both. Whew, what a discussion. Moving on. Iranian President Hassan Rouhani says he is ready to begin negotiations with the United States, but he says President Trump must first lift sanctions on Iran and return to the 2015 nuclear deal. This after Iran said it surpassed the limits on uranium enrichment outlined in the agreement. Trey Yinks with the reporting in Jerusalem. Trey.
Well, Harris, that's exactly right. Iranian President Hassan Rouhani says he is open to talks with the United States if the Trump administration first lifts sanctions on Iran. Meanwhile, the Trump administration says they will continue to increase pressure on the Islamic Republic amid news that they will be breaking more key terms of the nuclear agreement every 60 days. Now, Iran broke 2 key commitments of the nuclear deal this month by surpassing the uranium stockpile and enrichment thresholds laid out in the agreement. At a meeting of EU foreign ministers today in Brussels, British Foreign Minister Jeremy Hunt said Iran is about a year away from obtaining a nuclear weapon. This puts more pressure on Europe to find a way for diplomatic talks to take place between Tehran and Washington before the nuclear deal crumbles completely. The United States pulled out of the nuclear deal last year before reimposing sanctions on Iran. The move crippled Iran's economy and oil industry. The Iranians have responded by activating a number of proxies in the Middle East and targeting Western oil tankers and pipelines. Iranian President Hassan Rouhani said over the weekend that the United States has failed to adequately pressure Iran amid increased regional tension.
When a big power that is a bully, well, then we have to stand up to it. It must stop being a bully. We have always believed in talks.
Now, Harris, right now there are countries such as Japan and Iraq willing to mediate these talks between the United States and Iran. But amid the current conditions in the region and the rhetoric and tension happening as we speak, diplomacy looks very difficult right now. Harris?
Trey, thank you very much for the latest on Iran. Former special counsel Robert Mueller's testimony has been delayed 1 week now. Democrats say the hearing will allow Mueller to bring his report to life in their efforts to target the president. But